Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Will, and today we're going to be talking about Dipsy Divers. If you're new here, make sure you go down below, like and subscribe. We're going to be talking about gear over the next couple of days. These videos are mainly going to be for folks that are maybe new to this type of fishing. For those of you that have been doing this for a long time, maybe this is stuff that you already know, and maybe you have some additional feedback as well that you can leave in the comments. You know, by no means am I claiming to be the expert on all of this stuff. I know there's a lot of guys out there that have been doing this a lot longer than I have. But without further ado, let's talk about Dipsys, why they're useful, what they do, how to run them, and just kind of go through the whole thing. So let's get into it.
Okay, so what actually is a Dipsy Diver? A Dipsy Diver is really simply it's a device that allows you to get your baits away off to the side of your boat so that you can avoid tangles. And the Dipsy Diver itself is this plastic device with this big weight on the bottom that you can change. Let's go through how these work and how you can adjust the settings to fish the depths that you want to fish. All right, let's take a second and actually take a look at the Dipsy and what it is that we're working with and how we're using it. So when you run a Dipsy, you'll notice that on the back, on the bottom of the Dipsy, there's this weight. And on that weight, you'll notice there's gonna be a few little numbers. You see there's an R and an L for right and left. And there's a 3, 2, 1, and a 0. 0 is gonna be in the center. If your Dipsy is set on the 0 setting, it's intended to go straight back without deviating left or right. Now, if you go ahead and you loosen this screw up in the center and you were to shift this, say we shift it all the way to 3 just to make it kind of dramatic. If I were to hold this where the line attaches, you can see how that Dipsy is tilted to the side. Now, if you're in the water and you were to let that out, and you're going 2 to 2.5 miles an hour, the drag on this Dipsy is actually going to push this out in this direction, right? And you can see that weight tips it this way, and if you drop in the water, the drag is going to push on the face of that, and it's going to push it out, and in this case, out to the left. Okay, now in the same sense, you can shift this now to the other side, and it's going to be no different, okay? Now the weight's on this side, and now you can go off to the right side of your boat. So when you're letting out your Dipsys, if you buy 2 Dipsys and you're planning on running one on the left side and one on the right side, you want to make sure that the weights are always oriented so that if you're going off the right side, then you want this weight over here so that it pushes out, and then same in the other sense. Sometimes what happens is the screw comes loose and this kind of does what it wants and sometimes shifts or gets bumped to a position where you weren't intending to use it. Now, if you were to go ahead and run this Dipsy on that setting on the left side, well, that Dipsy is going to run like this, and it's going to run into your downrigger. So you always want to be sure that you've got your weights set, how you want them to be used, and then go ahead and take a screwdriver and lock that in so that nothing unintentionally happens or tangles lines. Another component is this lever here. Now this barrel swivel on the end, this is actually where you clip this to your Dipsy line. So this is where it connects to your main line on your rod. And before you let it out, you take this lever and you're actually gonna go ahead and you're gonna press it into this little notch here. And you're gonna hear it click. So here we go, listen. Okay, you hear it click and now it's locked in there. And the reason it does that is because you want that angle at which the Dipsy is being pulled to kind of go into the water. When a fish hits this, it should generate enough force to actually go ahead and release this clip. And when it releases that clip, what happens is that the face of this Dipsy is no longer being pulled into the current. It's actually running like this, where it's got less drag in the current. And then it's really just a matter of you and the fish without that additional drag of the Dipsy. Now what can happen is that this screw here, you can tighten this and you can loosen this to adjust how easy this pops. And so you need to kind of fine tune that so that when a fish hits it, that it releases, but that it does not release as you're letting out your line. You know, on a day when you're moving fast or there's lots of waves, or you're taking a turn really hard, if it produces enough extra drag than what you normally do, sometimes these can pop. And when it pops, you don't maintain the integrity of the depth, and sometimes you run into tangles. Kind of fine tune that just takes a little bit of time. You can see there's a nut there, and you can tighten it up a little bit, make it a little harder to release, or you can loosen it if you're finding that when fish hit, it does not release automatically. Let's go through this here. This is what's called a snubber, and this runs from the back of your Dipsy to the start of your leader line. And the snubber is intended to absorb the shock of when a fish strikes and head shakes and kind of keep that fish pinned. There's actually a lot of guys that don't run a snubber at all. They believe that it gives the fish a little bit too much to work with, and they'll just run like a mono leader here instead to kind of absorb that shake, or they'll just rely on the actual fishing rod they have to absorb the head shakes of those fish. Now, I don't necessarily have an opinion on this. I run snubbers on my high divers, and on my low divers, I'm actually not running a snubber right now. And that's simply just to kind of test out the theory to see, do I keep more fish on with the snubber and without? So more to come on that. And this is kind of the typical standard way. I do see more and more guys running Dipsy setups though, without any kind of snubber at all. These do kind of dry out and they get brittle over the years. And if you don't pay attention to them, they can, snap. It's just rubber. So, and then I've got a fluorocarbon leader that runs this clip here. And this clip is then where I hook up my flasher fly. And this leader length sometimes generates some controversy. There's a lot of people that believe this leader length needs to be 8 to 10 feet. There's other people that kind of run it, 4 to 5 feet. I typically just do a wingspan. It's probably about 6 feet for me, and it seems to work just fine. One of the things that you need to consider when you have a leader length this long and you're reeling in a fish, you got to remember that you can only reel up to this barrel swivel here. So when this is at the end of your rod, you still have this whole length between you and the fish. So if you don't have a long net, this could be a problem for you because the person that's fighting that fish then needs to walk way to the front of the boat, and this Dipsy can be swinging around. It can just lead to a lot of extra hassle. The leader length, between 6 and 8 feet is probably fine, and you're gonna catch fish if you're at 4 feet, you're gonna catch fish if you're at 10 feet. You just have to figure out what works for you. Now we'll talk about how you can run 2 Dipsies at one time without tangling them. For now, let's just pretend you're running 1 Dipsy on both sides of the boat. Okay, I'm gonna use my rig as an example. When we're looking at our trolling rigs, we always have our downrigger going right off the back of the boat or just slightly to the side of behind the boat. And next we want a rod that's not quite a planer board, but is outside of the downrigger and inside of the planer boards. So this is where we run our Dipsies. So now that we've gone over just kind of the standard Dipsy diver, what it looks like, the different components, how you can kind of set yourself up, I want to show you a different kind of Dipsy diver. It's still a Dipsy diver, it's just one size bigger. And as I was mentioning before, the weights on the bottom can vary in size, and the actual diameter of the Dipsy itself can vary in size. You can add these plastic rings to give it more diameter, and with a little bit more weight and a wider diameter, you're actually going to allow this Dipsy to sink in the water faster and deeper than the other one. Okay, so this is what's referred to as a mag Dipsy. By having Dipsies that run at different depths, it allows you to run more than 1 Dipsy at a time, because you're covering 2 different parts of the water column and you're in 2 different areas of the water column, so you're reducing the risk of a tangle. You can see the comparison here between just a regular number 1 size Dipsy and a mag Dipsy. The actual plastic disc is the same size, but you can see that there's this added ring on the outside. And the other contrast, as I was just saying, is the weight on the bottom. You can see there's kind of a dramatic size difference in that weight. You see how much wider that one is compared to this? Now it works the same, except you're just gonna dive faster with this Dipsy here than you are this Dipsy. So the next important question to ask is, how do I know exactly where in the water column these Dipsies are running? And it's kind of a loaded question for a few different reasons. All right, now the reason it's a loaded question is because there's so many different variables that contribute to the depth at which your bait is running. There's currents, there's speed, the type of line that you run on your Dipsy rods. And so it's gonna be really tough for me to give you just one answer today. But typically, Dipsy divers that you buy, the box that they come in will provide you with a depth chart. That depth chart is intended to tell you for every foot of line that you let out on your line counter Dipsy rod or reel, this is how deep this Dipsy diver will dive on this setting. I'm gonna show you kind of how to look at this. I'm gonna put a couple graphics up. Again, you're gonna have to look at your own setup. Everybody's is gonna be a little bit different, but this should at least give you a ballpark about where your Dipsies are running given some optimal conditions. Okay, so as I mentioned, when you buy your Dipsies, you're gonna get a chart on the back of the box. Now I cut this one out, I keep this on the boat. I also keep some screenshots on my phone, but you'll see here that this chart makes a couple assumptions for you. It makes an assumption that you're using 30-pound Power Pro on your Dipsy line, and that's referring to this Power Pro right here. So it's assuming that this is 30-pound Power Pro braid, and it's assuming that you're running at 2 to 2.2 miles an hour, okay? Now, to a lot of us, that feels probably a little bit low. I know a lot of guys that run 2.3, 2.5. So you gotta remember, if you're running a little bit faster, then you might be diving a little bit more than what this chart says. Now, we have 4 options. We have setting 0 through setting 3. And again, what that's referring to are the different settings here. You can see you have 3, 2, 1, 0, and then again 1, 2, 3 for the other side. And so depending on what setting you're on, let's just do 0 because it's easy. We're on 0 setting, and say I let out 50 feet on my line counter. Well, you can see right here, we're gonna be down 34 feet approximately if we're running 30-pound Power Pro and if we're running 2 to 2.2 miles an hour. Now, as you can imagine, if you come back to your Mag Dipsy, this chart might be a little bit more aggressive. On setting 0, if I let out 50, maybe instead of being down 34 feet, we're actually gonna be down closer to 50. But again, you're gonna have to reference the chart that comes with your specific diver to know what that ballpark is going to be. Once you've taken a look at your depth rater and you know where your thermocline is, let's say it's down 40 feet, and you're saying, okay, I wanna get my Dipsy to 40 feet. You've hooked everything up, you've fine-tuned your clip, you've got your weight set in the right direction, okay, you've picked which setting you want, and you've calculated exactly how many feet of line you need to get to that depth. You'll hook everything up, and then you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna swing that Dipsy in the water, and maybe I can put some footage over this to show you. And you're gonna slowly come off that drag, and you're gonna let this kind of creep out, okay? You don't want this to come out super fast. You don't wanna let it free spool. You just want it to slowly click out, okay? And that allows this flasher fly and this whole setup to go down nice and easy without any kind of tangles, right? You're gonna have your downrigger in, presumably. You might have some lead core lines in. You don't want to cause tangles, so you're going to let it out nice and slow until it creeps out to that depth that you're looking for. Now, a couple reasons that we do this is because a fish might hit on the way down. That thing just got hit.
You're on it. You got it.
Your target depth might be 40, but this line's going to start at 0. It's going to go down to 10, 15, 20. You're going to go through 40 feet of that water column, and there might be fish there that you weren't anticipating finding, but they might hit it on the way down. So it's just really smart to let this stuff out slower. It prevents tangles, and you'll actually put a few more fish in the boat. Let's talk about running 2 Dipsies at a time. I've talked to you about the Mag Dipsy. You know that runs harder and a little bit deeper compared to your number 1 size Dipsy. And if you're running 2, just like anything else, just like running your planer boards, your deeper rod is always gonna be on the inside. So this one here, it's a little bit shorter rod. It's gonna run the Mag Diver, and that's gonna run to the inside of what we call the High Diver. Now, typically, when you're running a low diver or a Mag Diver, you wanna make sure it's a mag with the ring, and you almost never wanna run beyond a 1 setting. I run a 1 setting to make sure that I'm away from the downrigger, but I don't go to a 2 or a 3 because I don't wanna risk tangling up into my High Diver. The outside rod, which is a little bit longer, and we're running these High Divers, again, less weight, less diameter. They're gonna run a little bit higher in the column. These I will never run under a 3 setting. And that guarantees that this diver is getting out to the side way farther than the Mag Diver. And it's always gonna stay up a little bit higher in the water column than this Mag Diver. That just makes sure that when I do my turns that these two are in different parts of the water column and far enough away where I'm not risking a tangle of expensive gear. I'll put some footage here of how nice these kind of run when everything is kind of set up right. My advice, and I have just started running 2 rods recently, or 2 divers on each side recently, is to just make sure you're doing everything slow. Pay attention when you're letting out lines that nothing's getting tangled up. Always, always, always double check that your weight is set in the correct orientation. Always do the test. Set your weight, hold it up, and think about, once I put this in the water, how, if that water is pushing on it from above, is it gonna push it this way or is it gonna push it this way? Always do that test and tighten down that weight with the screwdriver just to make sure it doesn't get bumped and readjust without you knowing it. Overall, Dipsies can be just a great way to catch these fish. I always run flasher flies on mine. I know you can run spoons, that's also effective, but flasher flies on Dipsies can be a deadly combo some days, and I've learned that stacking the Dipsies as well can be also a great, great opportunity. There's a whole nother portion of this where I could talk about running Dipsies with wire rather than braid, which is a whole nother ball game. Thicker diameter, heavier line. There's a lot of people that say running a wire Dipsy instead of a braided Dipsy gives some sort of action to the bait itself, or makes a hum in the water. So that's kind of a different video. I don't run those, so I'm not going to talk to you about them. But if you're running braided Dipsies, you want to try a stacked Dipsy system, I highly recommend it. You can see in the last video I had with Franny that we did really well with a stacked Dipsy setup on a day when the fish were down deep. So again, if you're new to the channel,
Make sure you like and subscribe if you appreciate this kind of content. I'm going to continue to do hopefully some good educational stuff for you all, especially you guys that are new to the salmon fishing business. And for those of you that are watching that aren't new and have been doing this much longer than me, please comment down below if I missed something or if you have some additional feedback for anyone else that's just getting started. So thanks for watching. Appreciate you all, and stay tuned for the next one. Have a good week.